Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, and we're having some tech issues today. Not that you know any better, but, I like to point out the obvious. If you happen to be just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show for the very first time, thank you so much for watching or listening. If you have watched for a really long time, then you probably know what I'm already going to say because I say it almost every single show. I'm excited for you to be here, and whether you watch or listen, be back in the studio. I think that having these episodes live in person has been such a cool way to connect, but then also mess around with tech because seems to be the thing that likes to give me the most problems. But we're back live in the studio, which is great. And my guest for today, I'm very excited for her to be here. She's flown out to be on the show and actually help with one of our upcoming events. So just cool to have her be here. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over. I normally have your bio up here, but we've had so much tech support challenges. I'm just going to let Carolyn tell a little bit more about herself. So tell the audience a little bit more about you and your story.
Hi, I'm Carolyn, and I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I am very grateful to have the most amazing, supportive, loving family. And growing up, I always had the most support. I always had the love around me. But every time I left my house and went to school, I always felt like I never fit in. And I got badly bullied at a young age. And from then on, it kind of just turned into internalization for every situation that I was going through in life. I found out my sophomore year of high school that I have a learning disability called nonverbal learning disability, which is basically you're highly verbal, but you do struggle with conceptual skills. You struggle with spatial awareness. You struggle with internalizing. So, growing up, I didn't realize that, as a sophomore in high school, that was kind of amplifying my anxiety and depression. So I silently struggled for years. And finally, in 2020, I had to make a change.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And I generally always have the bio up and I introduce you. But we've had a lot of fun today with technology challenges. So we just roll with it. And that's we were talking off camera about just being perfectly imperfect and whether it shows us that we're actually on screen or not. So but growing up and you're feeling different, you're feeling like you maybe don't belong or like something's off, and then you finally get a diagnosis that kind of helps notice or know a little bit more, I'm sure, from that point. So tell me a little bit more, because I'm not as familiar, but like, what were some of the things that were showing up for you as you were younger?
Well, things that really showed up for me were anxiety and depression. That was like a huge thing. As I said, I always did feel different growing up because it was almost like I was never in the cool group. I was never in the popular group. In high school, I wasn't invited to the parties. So I always just felt really out of place and felt like I never actually mattered. And so I was telling myself all those lies all the time. And part of nonverbal learning disability is that you replay situations in your head over and over again. So if someone looks at you wrong, you're like, oh, they hate me. Or if someone's talking, oh, they're talking about me. And so it's this constant cycle that you have to kind of train yourself through years of therapy, which is what I've done, to really kind of understand that not everything is personal and that, everyone is fighting a battle.
Ah, gotcha. So that makes more sense to me. And I could see how as you're processing and you're like going in those cycles of thinking patterns, how that could translate into depression and anxiety and whatever situation you're going into.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, I think anxiety and depression are so overlooked because I think sometimes people think, oh, depression, you're sad or whatever, or like you're just sad about a certain situation. But, being actually diagnosed with depression, it definitely was kind of like, all right, here's another thing that makes me even more different. And then finding out I had my learning disability, I'm like, okay, great. This makes me feel even more different. And this makes me feel more alone. Kids are going to make fun of me. I had to be in remedial math. Like I never felt a sense of truly belonging.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, what is the thought that just came into my head and then it like escaped? But I could only imagine like going through school. I mean, I know, so my son, as we were talking, he's 9 years old, about to be 10 in 4th grade. But there's a lot of, kids who are different or that have processing disabilities. And also talking about like anxiety and depression. And when you're younger, we don't necessarily, that was a thought, it's coming back. We don't, and actually I just had a recent conversation. My brain goes all over the place too. So
does mine. It's okay.
I'm like, apologies. But we don't talk about anxiety and depression in youth as much as we should.
Yes.
And it also manifests in other ways. It's not just like, hey, I'm 9 years old or I'm 10 years old and I have anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. It's like I have a stomach ache or I don't want to go to school or all the different ways that it kind of shows up. And so it can be hard to navigate as the person going through it, but then also as parents.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think about too all the time is like, wow, like I can't imagine what my parents had to watch me go through. And, obviously I'm not a parent myself, but I can imagine that that's a really hard thing to watch your child go through and not be able to do anything except give love and support and validate their feelings. That was one thing that I always say is my parents were always very validating of my feelings. Because whenever I was really depressed and in a really bad spot, in high school and college especially, I didn't really talk to my family as much as I should have. So, knowing that, I always had that support and always had them being like, we just want the best for you. Like, we'll get you help if that's what you need, but like, you're going to get through this. We're going to be there for you. Like, I know you're going through a hard time, but I promise you, we are here for you. And just having that love and support, I honestly think looking back made a huge difference. Because I think when you're a kid and you're going through anxiety and depression, the first thing is, and even as a public speaker, I've had people say to me, like, my parents don't understand. And, and I always say to them, I'm like, everything starts with communication. Everything starts with open dialogue. And so I always try to say that if you haven't broken that conversation with your parents, start with something like, hey, like, I really would like to talk to you. I really have something I want to talk to you about. I don't know how you're going to react to it, but I really want to talk to you about this. And please just hear me out. Because I think the other thing too, though, is, when people hear someone, they're just so quickly want to fix it. But you need to just let them, like, whoever you're telling someone to, whether you're a kid telling to a parent or you're even an adult telling to another adult, you need to be able to just get your thoughts out without hearing anything. You just want to be heard. I think that's the biggest thing is when you're feeling in this really bad spot, you don't feel heard and you don't feel seen. And that's really kind of where it all starts is just one conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, oftentimes when I talk to parents or talk to anybody really going through, it's hard to ask for help, right? Mm-hmm. And being so young, you maybe don't know exactly what's happening. But I think as parents, we can utilize our noticing skills, as I call them, and just ask layered questions. So it's like, hey, so I hear you have a stomach ache. What are you feeling right now? Mm-hmm. Or what are you thinking about right now? And then we can start tying that conversation into, oh, well, maybe this is not like my stomach is upset because I ate something bad last night. It's more of an anxiety or if they're always tired, say, I'm just really tired. I don't want to go to school. something of that nature, you can ask those questions of like, hey, I noticed that you've been really tired lately. What are you thinking about? Versus like, what's going on?
Right.
You kind of put up a wall where you're like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? Right? Like, that's not going to be a helpful part of the conversation.
No, it's definitely not. And I think, what you're saying too about talking about feelings and instead of being like, what's going on, being like, how are you feeling? Because I think that's something we so often overlook as a society is we're never like, think about it. If you talk to someone you haven't seen in a while, like, hey, how are you doing? You're not like, hey, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on in your life? Because people think it's weird, but we need to normalize those conversations so that people can feel comfortable being vulnerable and not feel like they're going to get ridiculed or judged or made fun of, because no one deserves that. Everyone deserves to live their truth and speak their feelings and talk about what's really going on, because everyone deserves to live the happiest life of themselves. Everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to be happy. When I was depressed, all I wanted was to be happy. I never thought I'd be happy. And I can honestly say I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, not through any external validation except for myself and knowing my worth and knowing just what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do. I think it took me a long time to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a good, I wanted to make a shirt that said sometimes like, I feel like crap, but that's okay. You don't need to fix me or something of that nature. Like, cause I think it'd be really cool if we went around instead of being like, hey, how are you doing? Great. Hey, how are you doing? Great. Right. Like those
are fine.
Yeah. Or I'm fine. Yeah. Instead of being like, I'm having a really shitty day today, but I don't need you to fix me. I just want to let you know that. How cool would it feel to be able to say that? Yeah.
And just having that, like that more acceptance and getting that stigma around mental health to go away fully with adults, with kids, with everyone, because everyone is going through something, everyone is fighting their own battles. You just might not see it. And I think that, my biggest thing with, NVLD was just kind of the assumption of assuming the worst about everything and constantly replaying situations in my head, which in high school, it didn't really help because I was shy. I was a completely different person than I am, now. I'm 27. I've had 10 years. Wow. That was a while ago. But, I really think that because of just being able to learn how to express my feelings and be comfortable with vulnerability, I have changed my life. And I also have noticed I've changed the lives of not like, oh, I've changed the life, but it's just like the lives of my friends and family. It's just like everyone's so open. We have such open dialogue. My best friends and I, it's like we are so upfront about everything that there's no bad blood ever. You know what I mean? Like there's no fight because it's just like, all right, if you're being annoying, let me walk away. Or like if I need 10 minutes, but it's like that's something I've always dreamed of, is having friends like that and having people who would understand me like that, because, being able for them to be like, hey, how are you feeling today? And I'm like, I'm having a crappy day. I really feel like shit, and just having them listen. I think just like listening to someone, just some people just want someone to listen to them and don't have that. And that's what breaks my heart, is that everyone deserves to have someone to listen to them.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I love that you said that, because I think what I love especially about the show is that we can have these open conversations, and it's not saying that anybody's doing it wrong or that they need to do exactly what we're saying. It's more of like, how can you start these conversations? How can you, in a different way, and allow people to have crappy days, allow people to have really great days. And on the days that you think that maybe they shouldn't be having a great day and they are having one, like, so for me, I was like, that was a really weird roundabout way of saying that. But for me, like when I think about, so the loss of my sister, right? The day of her, when she passed, I choose to celebrate that day. And that's just how I have processed things. And a lot of people reach out and they're like, how are you doing today? How's everything going? And I'm like, I'm fine. Right? Like, fine. The word fine.
The word we always use.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm okay. I mean, of course, when you go on Facebook and you see a whole bunch of posts, it's like sad, but it's also, I have gotten to a place that I can celebrate versus like being in that sad space, and that's okay. But then there's also those days that you're like, well, it's sunny outside. Like everything's good. How can you be in a bad mood? And you're like, no, I'm just having a really crappy day. And that's okay too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, what you said too, like about, celebrating your sister, I can't even imagine what you went through, and I'm so sorry about that. But also, I think it's amazing how you are able to make that a day of light of celebrating her. I have a sister and I can't even imagine my life without her, but I think you're so strong, and I think you're so awesome with everything you're doing, and, you're making a change, you're making a difference. And I just think you're using your pain and turning it into purpose.
Thank you. I appreciate that. On that note, we're going to go to our first quick sponsor break. But once we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of like how you got to this place of being strong and wanting to speak. And then I know you wrote a book, so we'll talk about that too. But we'll be right back after this quick sponsor break.
Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
One person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
1 in 8 people globally live with a mental disorder.
That's why empowering minds saves lives.
We need your help.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Hi, Laura Cross, your host for Mindful Mondays, every Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time, where you can embark on a transformative journey of self-care and ultimate happiness. Tune in to the Voyage to Vitality channel on the Achieve TV network. Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. Be there, be mindful, and join us on E360 TV.
Hi, I'm Ann Scotland, the host of Global Socialpreneurs. Join the experts, 12 p.m. EST on the Fresh Takes TV network for the best advice on social entrepreneurship. Join us here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much for tuning in, whether you are watching or listening. If you didn't see the first half of this, make sure you go back. My guest, Carolyn, and I are just talking really about her journey through a really like anxiety and depression when she was younger, but learning that she actually had a processing disorder, which ultimately gave a little bit more answers as to what was going on. But maybe a little bit, it might have been a little helpful to just understand why those cycles of thoughts happen and then what you can potentially do. And I know you talked about, that was super quick synopsis, but you talked about therapy and working on yourself. And I'm curious, like, so you got the diagnosis, and then were you like, well, you already said, you're like, something's got to change. So at that moment, tell me a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, when I first found out, I'm not going to lie, I was really depressed. I was not in a good place. And so when I found out that I had something that made me more different, I was really upset. 10 years later, now down the line, I'm very passionate about being an advocate for it and advocating for those kids who, may find out they have it and helping them know that it's okay and that they're going to get through it. And I just wish I had someone tell me that, I was going to be okay and that I was going to get through it. And, I think that when I first had the just realization of like, okay, what do I do next? Like I'm not doing well in my public school, and what's going to be the answer? So boarding school was what we ended up deciding, my family and I, and it was the hardest decision for all of us. My friends, from high school would always be like, oh, what'd you do? Get shipped off, but it's really kind of, my parents were about to move, but the admissions lady told them not to. And I'm glad they didn't, because they didn't have to fully uproot their life. But yeah, it was really hard because, I'm now in the middle of the year transferring to a boarding school, not knowing a soul, and just understanding too, okay, I have my LD here, but this school is for everyone with learning disabilities. So everyone here has something. So you'll feel understood, you'll feel heard there. And, you know, as hard as that experience was and as tough as it was, I realized that it made me very independent and it made me very aware of, you know, maybe that's what kind of helped me be more self-aware of, you know, how I was at that time, which was really depressed and not in a good spot. But I did know that. You know, the thing that just really breaks my heart, though, is, you know, I think now and I'm like, wow, I mean, 16-year-old Carol, you know, she's just going through the motions and trying to get through the day. And, you know, unfortunately at this point, you know, I was self-harming and, you know, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating, you know, I wasn't doing well. And that was the same way when I got to college. You know, I thought college was going to be the best 4 years of my life, and it was far from it. A couple weeks into it, I realized this is the worst decision I've ever made. Why am I here? And that was really, really hard to come back from, because I was like, I thought this was going to be so different than high school, and it wasn't.
Well, and I think, I mean, as you transition in that part of your life, you're like, I'm going to do something different and it's going to be great. And I'm so excited. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm still doing school in a way. Right.
Yeah.
And I know, at least for me, it's very similar, right? It was like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah. And then it didn't exactly work that way. Like I kept changing my degree. And then I was like, okay, I just have to stop going because I can't figure out what I want to do. And it's not really helping me. So,
yeah.
But then, I mean, so you go to college and you're there for 4 years.
Well, the first school.
Okay.
So the first school that I went to, I was there for a semester. And this was my rock bottom. This was, you know, really this spot in my life. You know, I haven't really, except in my book, I haven't fully talked about really that year publicly, but it really, that year, 2016, 2017, those were my hardest years, you know, because I go to school, I go to college, I think it's going to be great. It's not. I don't fit in. I don't have friends. I don't have anyone to go to the dining hall with. You know, I'm sitting in my room crying alone, all this stuff. I was really mentally unstable. I was self-harming almost daily. You know, I wasn't, again, taking care of myself, and I didn't take care of myself for so long. And I just was like, it doesn't even matter if I'm here or not anymore, because here again, I always felt like I was never chosen. I felt like I was never chosen by guys, and I felt like I was never chosen by friends. And so I just felt so isolated and alone, and I just felt like I didn't have any reason left to live. And one fall night, my freshman year, first semester, that's when I was at my breaking point. And that's when I almost made the biggest decision that would have just been the worst regret of my life. And, you know, I don't know if it would have been something, it wouldn't have been something I could come back from. And so I'm really lucky that I didn't do that. But I always look back at, you know, myself as a freshman, and I'm like, wow, like if only she knew, you know, what was ahead for her, if she just kept on going and, you know, held on, because everyone goes through hard times, and sometimes it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which it certainly was for me. But, you know, the craziest part of freshman year of my experience in college was my best friend in the entire world happened to call me at that second.
Wow.
If she wouldn't have called me, I'm not going to cry, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. And I feel so lucky that I had that angel, but I want everyone to have that angel. And if my story can inspire someone to give them hope or help them keep going, then I know I'm doing what I want to do and doing my purpose, because, you know, it's just insane that I, you know, had that, you know, and if I didn't, I don't know where life would be now. But I also just know how grateful I am for her and that friendship, and just being there for me even when I didn't see it, even when I couldn't see that I did have a, you know, support system holding me up, even though I just was too oblivious to see because I was in such a dark place.
Yeah. Bravo for your friend. And it's very interesting how that divine intervention happens.
Yeah.
to guide us into our purpose, but also knowing. So you said a lot of things that I kind of want to unpack just a smidget. But when you are at that bottom, right? Like it's hard to get out of that place. It is all consuming. A lot of people talk about it like darkness, and there's not any light at all. Also, knowing that you got to the bottom and that was the space, and there was one singular person that happened to shift that for you. I think that's so incredibly cool. I talk a lot about like safety plans, or we have one that we built, but it's really like, what are those things that can get me out of that dark place, knowing that I've been there before.
Right.
So I always recommend anybody that has ever to create that safety plan, so that even if it's one person, right, you're like, I know this person or this thought can help me, or I'm grateful for different things, right? But knowing that there is people that surround you, you just weren't able to see it at that moment.
Yeah.
Now you've made that shift and transition. So did you, from that point, were you like, I got to go to a different school, or?
Well, after that whole thing, of course, you know, I mean, honestly, I can't say this enough. She is legit my angel, and she is like the most selfless, creative, most beautiful, intelligent, like woman I've ever met. And I'm so just thankful that I had her. I can't even believe sometimes that I am even here talking right now, because I'm like, that could have gone so differently. And I also think that brings me to the point of reaching out to someone who maybe you haven't talked to in a while. If you have a feeling that something's not right, because you never know if that call, if that text stops someone from taking their life.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened for me. And I will never be able to repay her for what she's done for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that as humans, sometimes, depending, I guess, we get those tingly feelings every once in a while. So I think genuinely just reaching out to people and making the connections, and you never know like what connection's actually going to help save a life, or just even make somebody's day a little bit brighter. So
yeah, even just a smile at someone, you know, you just never know how much that can like help their day. Because, you know, the other thing I also see too about it is, you know, I'm very lucky to have my people and my tribe, and, you know, my best friends now. I've dreamed of having friends like that in high school. And these girls are literally like thick and thin. We got each other's back, you know, and I'm very lucky to have that. Not everyone has that tribe. And so I think it's really important to start with, okay, if I'm not in a good place and I don't think I have anyone I can talk to, call 988 or text 988. You know, they made the number shorter for a reason. And I think that that is something, I never personally utilized it, but I think that that's something that could really help someone who is struggling. Or, you know, reach out to a family member, you know, find, if you're in, you know, middle, high school, college, you know, they do usually have guidance counselors and like therapists and stuff. You know, you just have to kind of, unfortunately, you have to kind of look for the resources. They're not fully handed to you. But, you know, the biggest thing I learned once I hit rock bottom was that I was the only one who could change. No one could change for me. I was so comfortable being depressed, being just, basically, I was just comfortable being suicidal every day. That sounds so horrible, but it's like, I was like, I don't even care. And like, I would always just like text my family and friends and be like, I want to like KMS every day. And I'm like, I want to cry, because how could I say that? You know, like those people are there for me and they love me. And I can't believe I almost did that to them. And I just, you know, my dad, like literally the most selfless man ever. And, you know, my sister has become my best friend, and my mom, oh my gosh, like, there is no better woman than her. You know, she has taught me everything I know. And it kills me to know that I was once at that place where I was doing that, because I think about it now and it's like, how could I ever? And I think that's also a really big growth thing too, is like, you know, how could I ever be in that place again?
Yeah. And I think, so there's a lot of really good pieces that you said there too. We're going to go to our quick last sponsored break, but then once we come back, I'm going to unpack a little bit of what you said too. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Carrie, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Make Mental Health Matter save lives?
Number 1. Awareness.
My story, however, it isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction. And because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here. And if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
2. Conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community. It is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3. Education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling.
And like that, we're back again. If you're just joining the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you go check out the first half of this, because you missed a lot of what we were talking about. But before we went to the break, you had brought up some really great points as far as, first and foremost, being in a dark place and not realizing all the people that you had surrounding you. And you got to this point, rock bottom, that you almost took your own life, potentially, right? It either went that way or you had a friend that called you in that moment. And now knowing, as you shifted more into this place of like, I got to make a change. I'm the only one that can actually do anything about it, because no matter who surrounds you, the wonderful, wonderful people that you have in your life, no matter how great of a childhood you have, right? Your parents can be the best, your life can be the best, but sometimes there's still youth that have depression or that live with depression or experience anxiety, and it's nothing the family, right? But also who surrounds you. That shift of knowing that I have to change myself, how other than right at that moment and that friend calling, like what was really helpful in really making that shift?
So to be completely, fully transparent, this was not just like an overnight switch. This was something where once that happened, my parents, of course, she was on the phone with me, texting them. They came up, took me home. They didn't want to send me back to school. I had to promise them that because at that point, I really was passionate about graduating in 4 years, because that's still, I guess, subconsciously, I was like, I'm going to do this. So I was like, I have to go back. I can't lose all these credits. And so I had to fully make a promise with them that I was not going to do anything. And that was really hard, because they, for days, were like, you're not going back. We can't lose you. That was so traumatic for everyone. So basically I ended up making I made a pact with them. I said, listen, I promise we'll just get through the semester and then I'm coming home. And so then once I came home, it was not like it was like, oh, it was just all great and dandy. That was really hard too, because then I'm going into second semester of my freshman year in a whole new school. And as in college even, it was still really hard. Now in college you do it by semesters. So it was like I was starting classes with everyone and stuff like that, but it still was like, not doing too well. And so I think that for a while I, found some validation, and I was getting validation from others, and, guys were giving me attention, and I was like, oh, I'm like starting to fit in here. Great. But because I was also at a very unstable point at this point, like the second a guy ghosted me, or like the second like a friend dropped me, I was like, oh my God, I suck. Like, why? What is it? Am I ugly? Am I not ugly? Like, I would just go in this whole rabbit hole, this rampage. And so my sophomore year of college was actually when I still was going to therapy, but it wasn't enough. And that was when my therapist said, you need to do something called intensive outpatient therapy. And I freaked out, because this is a very common thing when you are in depression and in a really bad spot, is denial. And so I was like, no, I don't need help. I don't need help from anyone. Like, I'm fine. Like, it's all good. Like, whatever. Meanwhile, like, I wasn't in a good place. I was still not coping properly. And, it wasn't good. And so after that, a couple weeks later, something happened. And basically my friend at the time, which again, very thankful for her and, everything, but I don't want to, cause any triggers, but she saw something on me, told her dad, told my dad. I was so mad at her, because I was like, how could you do that? How could you betray my trust? How could you ever hurt me like that? And looking back now, I'm like, that she literally was just trying to help because she loved me, and cared. And so after that, my parents were like, all right, we really got to talk about intensive outpatient therapy. And I was like, no. But then there was like a week later where I was like, I need help. I need to do this. So I had to do it. I had to call the number and I had to say, listen, this is how I'm feeling right now. I'm not doing well. I'm really not coping with life in a proper way. I'm not doing it in a healthy way, that's for sure. And so they immediately were like, we want you to come in for an evaluation and all that stuff. And so from then on, I was like, okay, I guess I have to, do this. So I did IOP. And, the thing about IOP and the thing about therapy is like, it wasn't like everything was perfect afterwards, because also healing isn't linear. Mm-hmm. And I fell back and I had a hard junior year. And, it didn't really help that I wasn't really, it wasn't really good. And there was just a lot going on in my life and I was just making really bad decisions. And then my senior year of college, I was starting to take therapy a little more serious, but not like fully. But then March 15th, 2020 happened, and that's when my life changed forever. That was the day of my car accident. And, that was the day that I truly believed that by the grace of God, I had a second chance at life. And I knew it was my second chance and I wasn't going to take it easy. And after that, it was like something shifted, like fully in me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be with my mom and dad. I don't want to be with, like, except for very few of my best friends. I don't want to be with anyone else. Like, I just want to be with them. Like, I was so dependent. There was a whole new kind of just mindset, this whole new just me, really. Because I realized that, the car accident was actually, I grabbed my seatbelt seconds before the accident, and then we crashed and the car was totaled. And by the looks of the car, you would have thought everyone died. And, everyone was alive and had injuries and, I had injuries and stuff, but I realized that I had a bigger purpose. And it was like, it took that life-threatening moment of almost, you know, I was in the backseat middle, grabbed my seatbelt seconds before the crash, you know, like it was almost like a movie, like really, if you think about it, like you're talking to the guy and then all of a sudden his friend's like, oh, he's actually talking to all these other girls. And I was like, you're kidding me. And I literally whipped my head around and I'm like, guys, we're going to die. This is it. And then everyone's screaming and it was just horrible. And then everything went black.
Wow.
And then I was like, I don't know how I'm alive.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, not that we want anybody to have to go through near-death experiences to change, but it's a pivotal moment in your life where you knew, you're like, oh, yeah, like something's got to change. And I love that you mentioned healing is not linear.
No.
It's not perfect. No. I talk about just the grief and loss journey it's a journey. It's a roller coaster at times. You have your high highs, your low lows, and I think it's the same with depression and anxiety and any other mental health challenge, is that it can be really, really good days and it can be really, really bad days, and there's no perfect process by any means. So now car accident and making these shifts, and you're like, I want to be around the people that are valuable to me and important in my life. Mm-hmm. So what led you in, and I'm going to fast forward the timeline a little bit because we have about 10-ish minutes. But fast forward, like what made you want to start speaking and writing a book and sharing your story?
So it's funny. The reason I wanted to write the book was because, I'll try to say it fast, but I was recovering after that car accident on the couch, and I kept thinking, oops, perfectly imperfect. And I kept thinking of the number 2, and I was like, what? And for a day I had that number in my head. I was like, what is this? And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I've almost faced death twice, once by choice and once just praying that I'd make it out of here alive. Maybe I should write a book. And I actually had a friend who, again, not seeing it at the time, but my only friend from my first college, and they say moms are always right, and they are, but my mom made me join one club while I was there. She was like, please just join one. And of course I joined the writing club. And she actually wrote a book a couple years ago, and she always said, oh, you have a great story, you should do this, and I was like, no, like I'm not doing that. But after the car accident, I called her, I said, should I do it? And she said, yes, go for it. So I ended up going through this program, and then I submitted it to publishing and, went through all that. And that's really how the book came to be. But speaking, after I had my book, I realized I was like, I want to do more. I want to make more of an impact, more of a difference. And honestly, I used to hate public speaking when I was like in college. And I just remember how just anxious I would always get for those presentations. But, doing it as a passion, doing it as a life choice, and as where I see my life is just meant my purpose, it's so different. And, just the reason I really wanted to do speaking though was because that one person who comes up to you after and is like, thank you, or I almost did that, or I almost took my life, or whatever they say. And it just feels so fulfilling to know that I made a difference. And to me, that's what it's about is, everyone has a purpose. It's about finding your purpose. And maybe all the things I had to go through were to lead me to that. But I love speaking, and, I'm actively booking right now. So if anyone needs a speaker, I speak about mental health of course, the journey I went through with positivity, adaptability, and resilience. And, really kind of talking about how you can make one choice and better your life one choice at a time.
Yeah. And I feel you with the public speaking. I had to take that in college also. And I never imagined that would be the thing that I wanted, because I literally was like shaking with a piece of paper when I was trying to talk, and oh yeah, horrible. And then I had a mentor, and they're like, you should tell your story. And I'm like, on a stage? What? So I feel you there. Now, several years later, on stages all over the place, and have the show. So you never know. But so I know you have your book here if you want to show and tell a little bit more. What is the book all about?
This is Unbreakable, and the cover, I guess I should say the cover's because people always have a story of how they have the cover. And basically, when I was a kid, I was, really anxious and just always on edge, and I was with my dad once and we were on vacation and I was like crying. I was probably like 7, 8. And he was like, just listen to the waves, just listen to the waves. And I realized like the ocean is like my happy place and like my healing place. And so it really kind of was about like tranquility and just understanding that I was unbreakable. And, I think that, a lot of times people even ask me why I put my middle name on the book. And it's because my grandma, who passed away years ago, her name was Sophie. My middle name is Sophia, named after her. And so I was doing the edits for it and I knew I was going to get published. And, last minute I was like, okay. Like I was like doing all the things. My dad comes in and goes, hey, I just thought about this. Like if you want to, you don't have to, like it's totally up to you. But what if you put your middle name on for your grandmother? And I said, Dad, that's a great idea. I'll think about it. And then like a day later, I was like, Dad, I'm going to put that on as like a nice homage to her. So that's also why I sometimes go by Carolyn Sophia now.
That's awesome. Names are like a big thing. It's like this thing.
Yeah. Oh, going back to the book. Oh my gosh, I didn't answer your second question. But going back to the book, it's really just kind of about, understanding that you are enough as you are and that you are worth it as you are. And that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. There's a lot of statistics in there too to show that like a lot of people are struggling with the same things that you might be. And really kind of the hope is to help people accept who they are and help people understand that, they can get through hard things. They can make it through hard things. You don't have to go through a near-death experience like I did to change your life. And that's also really why I emphasize that too, is because it's like, maybe that was my purpose, but, someone else has a different purpose. And I think the great thing is my story is not anyone's story who's watching this, or listening to this. It's just, you can get something out of it because you can understand like, wait a second, I can better my life from where I am right now. It can start right now with one decision, just one simple step. Maybe be a little more positive and not in like a toxic way of like, let's be positive, but like in a way of like, just understanding like there are great things in life and it's important to appreciate those things because we are lucky to have this life. And, finding simple things and finding gratitude has just changed my life. And I really kind of show it through the book too. And it's really special to me. And I wrote it to help one person. And now if I could help as many people as possible and, just keep speaking and doing what I'm doing, I feel so fulfilled. And I feel like that's my life mission.
I love that. And I don't know if you know the story, but the story about the little boy, the power of one. It's a little boy is on or near the ocean and he's picking up starfish and throwing them back into the ocean. Mm-hmm. And older gentleman comes by and he's like, what are you doing? And the kid says, well, I'm saving the starfish. And he says, there's millions here. How are you possibly going to save all of them? And he picks up one, throws it in, and he says, well, I did for that one. It's much longer than that, but it reminded me when I saw the cover of your book. So the power of one, as you talked, you never know that one person that you might connect with. You don't know that one person that connects with that person. And so the cycle keeps going. Mm-hmm. So tell the audience, so any final thoughts that you want to share, and then how can they, whether they want to go get your book or follow you, where can they do that at?
Yeah, so one more thing that I will say, and this is really what I try to emphasize at the end, is that if you're listening to this and you feel like you relate and you feel like you're not doing well and you feel like you need help, please don't wait. Please take this moment to say, all right, I'm going to either text 988, call it 988, or I'm going to go find a therapist. Whatever it is, go find help, because I promise you there is no shame in getting help. Help is what saved me. And had I not have gotten help and bought into the help, I never would be here today. And, at the end of the day, it's just important to understand that you are unbreakable and you're going to make it through.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you for flying in. And where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. Good question. So I have my Instagram, which is Carolyn Sophia with 3 A's. And then I also have my website, carolynsophia.com. And through that, you can actually book me for speaking engagements. There's a form on there you fill out, which comes to me and we can set up a call, or you can just email me at carolyn@carolynsophia.com. And that's another way too. And the book, Amazon.
Cool. Well, all of the links will be in the comments. And it's, for those of you that are listening, it is CarolynSophia.com. Did I get that right? Okay, cool. Well, no matter what you do, make sure you come back next Monday. I go live every single Monday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on E360 TV, or you can listen on Dream Vision 7 Radio at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. by simply saying, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And I hope that you also go check out Carolyn's website, get her booked on some stages, tell her story, because you never know that one person or people that are in the audience that need to hear the message that they're not alone to actually truly save a life. And I and my guests, we talk about it all the time, is it could be that the power of one. It could be any person out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a professional in the space. You yourself as an everyday person can possibly save a life. So make sure whatever you do, you come back next week, and I have some amazing guests lined up. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Make Mental Health Matter show. I'll catch you next week. Bye, y'all.